still served his Lord. Though weak and feeble he grew, 'cause with those prayers that he prayed 3 times a day, he did more than any strong man could do. So if my voice starts to leave me and I cannot talk, or if my feet start to fail me and I can't even walk, or if my eyes get so weak I can't see my way, I'll never get too old to pray.
One street over there's a life I could have known, who would have kept me from the one I had today.
Oh, good morning. How you doing, Robinson County? Is it Monday? I can't keep my days straight. I'm like on day 8 working the CMAs. If you've been paying any attention, you knew, man, last week we were coming in here after overnights and, it was rough. But, the show is going to be gorgeous. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be wonderful this year, the CMA. So much fun. This is something my husband and I do. Hi, I'm Laverne. I'm U-Turn Laverne. This is 1100 WSGI, and this is One Street Over, a chance to see what's going on one street over from where we live. And so, we're doing all that. But, yes, I'm continuing to moonlight. Well, not moonlight now. I took some vacation and been working the CMAs, worked all weekend long. So much fun. Got to work on staging for Miranda Lambert and just all kinds of folks, and it's just neat. It's just neat to see all this stuff coming together, and it's going to be an awesome show. You got to watch it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Anyway, back to the business at hand. We have got things going on around us in our community that we want to know about, and we have got John Edwards in here, who is our mayor of Little Cedar Hill. Vice Mayor. I'm sorry. Yes, I misspoke. Vice Mayor.
Good.
I knew better. He is our Vice Mayor of Cedar Hill. And you've been getting a little bit of attention lately, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is?
Am I in the right
you're
thing?
You're on the right. Pull that microphone up to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And again, this is what I kind of technically live in Cedar Hill.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I live at the very dead end of Lawrence Lane. My mailbox is in Springfield, so I have a Springfield address, but I think our property is technically Cedar Hill property. I'm not really sure. We're county, so we're agricultural. But so what's going on? Kind of fill us in, please.
Yeah, really what we're looking at and kind of, I think anybody that's kind of knows what's going on is we're kind of looking at responsible growth. That's been kind of the talk of the county, especially lately. And, it's a tough subject and a touchy subject. And that, it's a subject that I think a lot of us are talking about, and it's something that we're looking at and trying to be different than all the other counties around us. I think that's an important distinction to make is, preserving the rural farmland, but also allowing that growth and responsible growth to happen where people can develop their properties as they want to, and that balance, that give and take.
Right.
So,
well, and so, okay, so with all that said, if you've got people, I grew up on farmland, okay, and I'm very much, I kind of try to stay out of real controversial stuff because I think this show is here to inform. This is here's what's going on.
Yes, ma'am.
So I try really hard to do that. Now I kind of stepped in it with Coopertown and this whole thing against the Barnetts because of the shooting range. This is a Second Amendment issue. To me, this is a private lands issue, and as long and it is my opinion, and we kind of talked about this. This is why we were a minute or two late coming on, because I wanted to make sure we knew where we were on this, because I don't think we're on the same side with this. And just full disclosure, because I grew up with people who own farmland, and as long as you are not doing something nefarious, it's your land.
Yes, ma'am.
And I respect the ability to be able to do that. I have 40 acres. I have no desire to develop the land. My children might want to, so I don't want to do things to prevent them from being able to grow as the country grows. That's
Yes,
I understand, man, wanting to keep the whole Mayberry feel and the rural feel. I want that too. That's the reason why on my 40 acres. I live next to a lot of property that I expect could end up having lots of houses on it one day.
Yes, ma'am.
So I let 10 tillable acres go to seed, and I have woodlands now. That's what I did to solidify my privacy.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that's what I did, because I can see it coming, because I'm on the Springfield city limits. And I get that. I live next to a wastewater plant. I moved in next to it. The EPA keeps them in check. They've been a great neighbor. And so they've had issues over the years, but they are regulated. And so that's where I'm coming from. And so that's what I'm saying. And because I watched the news story on this.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've watched the concerns, and I kind of know players on both sides of the table here. So that's where I'm coming from. So,
ma'am.
So what say you?
Well, with us, it's like I said, it's trying to find that balance. It's, we also have land and it's rural, and I think a lot of people in Robertson County are open for growth. There's a lot more than I think what people. It's almost kind of like if you're in between, you're kind of like, well, you're either for nothing or you have to be all in.
Right.
And I think a lot of us, it's not that we're opposed to growth. It's just you want the right growth in the right areas that has the right infrastructure. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at is, a lot of times your municipal wastewater companies are spot on. They're really regulated. Your private wastewater, which is kind of what we've looked at, and I know even the new Channel 5 article that came out, your private wastewaters are a lot different than your municipals because there's a lot of deregulation that's happening from just the state level on down. And so it's a little bit different. That's the big concern is it's like I said, you're not quite looking at the infrastructure is that we have here that can support it compared to another place that they're just not quite there yet.
Well, see, I know that some others, the plant that we're talking about is privately owned.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
So I kind of looked into that a little bit, and they had some issues, but they've renovated, and they're doing fine now. And the people who I personally know, they've got some land they want to develop, they're like, okay, if we can't tap into that, we're going to do our own. And again, all very, very, I grew up on a hog farm with lagoons, y'all. I get this stuff. I get this stuff. And so, we're row crop now. My brother's like, shut up, Laverne. You just don't even start because you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm sorry, my brother. I'm so proud of my farming brother. He's just him and his beautiful bride. They are farmers, and I'm so proud of them. But they row crop now, and we don't do that anymore. But when we were a farm that dealt with lagoons and all of that, you're so closely regulated.
Yes.
Just absolutely. And so I know that. So I guess that's my thing is like, I mean, I get that I would prefer that the land next to me stay farmland. It is not going to happen.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen. And it may be 20 years from now, but eventually I live walking distance from downtown Springfield. Eventually, there's going to be houses on top of houses there. I can see it coming.
Yes.
And it may be 20 years coming, but folks, that's what happens. That is why, again, I said I let 10 acres, about 10, go to seed, and I have this nice little woodland there. And so that's what trees are for,
Yes, ma'am.
I have
Yes,
discovered this thing called bamboo, and I love bamboo, and I have bamboo everywhere now. And everybody wants my bamboo because it's such a wonderful shield against things that when you want to really feel I like feeling like I'm out in the country. I want that feel.
ma'am.
And I have a friend that had a house up in Green Hills, and the way they had landscaped it, when you were in their yard, you felt like you were in the woods.
Yeah.
It was
Yes, ma'am.
spectacular. So there's so many things you can do to keep that with the land you own.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so
ma'am.
when it's, again,
It
I
is.
know
It's
we're on opposite sides of this because
Yes, ma'am.
and I know that there's other developments doing the same thing this one group's wanting to do. So there's another group that's already been granted the same thing they're requesting. So I don't see the problem.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Is that in the local area or is that?
My understanding, and I may have misunderstood, but my understanding is that there's some property across the street from the one that's getting a lot of controversy right now that's doing the exact same thing that they're wanting to do. Like a house on half acre, I think is what it is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it.
Keep right on the mic there,
yes,
John.
ma'am.
If you don't mind.
I think a lot of it is just your size. You have you may have like a 35 lot subdivision that's zoned within an area that is more toward your village center. So your village center, what it's called, the county has adopted. It's a transect planning plan. So basically within your core, so like Springfield, your Main Street, you start off dense, and then the further you kind of branch out, it's like a ripple. You slowly get thinner and thinner and thinner, and you want that divide to be, you know, between your rural and your urban. You want that. I mean, there's not really any such thing as a seamless transition, because there's always going to be, you know, but you try to make that as seamless as possible. And 35 acres or 35 lots in an area where it's designed to be growth, and then 100 and how many ever, possibly 140, 169. It's a difference between the two. And it's like I said, I think everybody is for responsible growth, and I think it's just trying to find that give and take, that balance. And it's a hard subject, and I can identify with them. And like I said, it's a challenging thing, and really, like I said, it's not even about that. It's just about responsible growth, just for the county. That's what we want to do, and you know, I think that's kind of what we're looking at.
Well, how do you resolve this then?
It's a challenge, because you hope ideally that, you know, for our situation, for responsible growth, the two sides can hopefully meet in the middle, and you can have a decision that both, really, if you have a decision where both parties walk away and they're not happy, that means you made a good decision. And so that's kind of what we look at. Is I think it's a give and take, and the big thing that sometimes a lot of what happens is, previously, like years ago, there may have been a property that was zoned for, say, R20 or high density years ago.
Right.
Well, then
R20 just means you can put two houses on an acre. So
correct.
each house can have a half acre lot, is what R20 means.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
for those that are listening.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am. And so in 2017, the county adopted the 2040 growth plan, which kind of leads us toward the future. So kind of the 2040 growth plan is built around really preserving your rural and your agriculture, but also, you know, looking at also allowing that growth, because we're going to grow. You can't stop it. And it's just mainly just trying to kind of, you know, be on top of that. I always tell people, you can manage growth, or growth can manage you. And that's what we're looking at. It's just we want to make sure it's responsible, everything is in place. That way, as we get closer to it, then you have a less likelihood of things going wrong, and it fits the area.
Well, and I mean, my understanding is the biggest concern regarding infrastructure is the sewage issue.
It's a combination of several things.
Because and I know that this particular person, this particular group, they're willing to do their own private wastewater or whatever. They're willing. They're like, if we can't tap into that, we'll do our own.
Exactly.
And so that, again, I just kind of come back to, I really get. I would prefer them not to come in and put houses on a half acre right next to me. It's going to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
I would be doubtful if it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because of where we are.
Exactly.
And again, I let 10 acres go to seed, and I put in bamboo because I want my privacy and I want to maintain my privacy. And I have neighbors that say, "Oh, the traffic on the road and this and that." Well, that's just part of being where you are. When we moved where we moved, we knew when I first moved down to Lawrence Lane. Oh, there's no telling how many houses have been built since I got there in '92.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot more traffic on that road, and I get that. And that's why we have traffic laws, and we have to slow down, and we have to be respectful. I mean, that's why you have those things in line. And so, I mean, it seems like the roads are good there. So it seems like the sewage issue is the big talking point, really.
Yeah, that's a
more
main
than anything.
It's a main sticking point. And then also, when you look at the 2040 growth plan, which the county adopted, so it's zoned into the ordinances. In the 2040 growth plan, it's a legal mandate. And around that, it's built around even so like your roads that are called policy restricted roads. So roads that are built to be more scenic and agrarian, preserving that also with your growth. And that's something you have to factor in too. It's everything is a plan. And it's all a legal mandate. And it's like I said, plans can be
Plans,
changed. And,
plans
Yes.
kind of get on my nerves sometimes.
Yes,
I was
ma'am.
like, yeah, I don't like.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
not big on government plans. I mean, I think I'm a very much. The views and opinions are my own and don't necessarily express the views and ownership of this radio station. I am aligned with the Republican Party. I run for Republican offices because that's the only sandbox there is to play in. But I am more
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a patriot, y'all. I wish we had a patriot party. I'm just. If it does not pick my pocket nor break my leg, what concern is it of,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just saying, but so I just, that makes me nervous when we start talking about these long-term plans because I respect these farmers, man. They're the ones who've built this county.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
And to come back in and say, well, you can't do that. It's like, should you be doing that? I take issue with that. So I
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
know. You're a great guy. You're a great guy,
thank
but
you.
I think we're on the opposite on this one. And I hope
that's the great thing about America.
Yeah, I mean that's just it.
Everybody has opinion.
This is the thing. We need to be able to critically think and to
Yes.
have conversations that we don't always agree with each other on. And
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I respect the heck out of and that's why whenever we sit down, I took a minute to make sure you knew that we were on the opposite sides of this.
Yes, ma'am.
I tell you, I
Yes,
do
ma'am.
need to pause and take a break. Vice Mayor John Edwards is in from Cedar Hill, and I think I don't think I got to vote for the Cedar Hill elections because I'm not in the municipality.
We're very small. There's about
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
you could probably, if I was good at golf and I could hit a golf ball straight, you could
Yeah.
probably hit it from one end to the other. It's very
Of
small.
the voting group.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I
Yeah,
got you.
yes,
I
ma'am.
got you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, see, and so because I'm technically probably in Cedar Hill, but I'm very much agricultural, and so so I could say, well, this doesn't affect me, but it affects my neighbor, so it matters. That's
Yes,
what
ma'am.
One Street Over is all about.
Exactly.
Things that affect your neighbor. We want to know what's going on. So, and with that said, Congressman John Rose is going to be calling us if all the planets align and all the phone lines work and everything does. Sometimes we have some phone issues, but everything's been working great lately. But we're anticipating a phone call from John Rose at 7:30. So get ready for that. If you have some questions, you can throw them up in the comments, and I will share those. But I am going to pause for just a moment and talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with the Exit Realty Garden Gate team. Perfect timing. Talking about growth in Robertson County. They can tell you a lot about it because they are a wonderful realty team and they know their stuff. Rebecca's been at this a long time. She's one of the first in the area to be a senior real estate specialist. So that means that she's been specifically trained to take care of situations like we're talking about, where somebody's got some family land. They're like, hey, this is, it's a really good time to maybe develop it and sell it. And they can help you with that. She's been specifically trained to do that. Barry is the marketer that makes sure everybody knows your property is for sale. And why is that important? Because when people know your property is for sale, you're going to get top dollar for it. That's what matters. And so you've got a great team there with Barry and Rebecca Richards, Exit Realty Garden Gate team. You can connect with them at sellwithbecky.com, or robertsoncounty.com. But don't let that buy Robertson County fool you. They also buy and sell in the surrounding counties across the state line up in Kentucky, and they can take care of your needs no matter where they might be. But Barry's a Zillow certified photographer. That means he'll put you up on realtor.com. He's a licensed and insured drone pilot because you want to know what's going on in these rural areas. You want to know what's happening in the areas around you. And he is a Zillow certified photographer. Did I say that? Oh, and he can do those 360-degree virtual reality home tours. So you can walk through a home without having to walk through the home. They're the whole package. Great friends. Barry and Rebecca Richards with the Exit Realty Garden Gate team. Get in touch with them today and please tell them that U-Turn sent you. And in the house, we've got Vice Mayor John Edwards is with me. And we're talking about the responsible growth of Robertson County. And from my perspective, responsible growth is as long as you do everything in regulation and by abiding by the law and the way that everything's, that's responsible growth to me.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
may not really be thrilled that I've got a whole bunch of houses moving in next to me, but oh well, I live very close to, I'm in with walking distance to Springfield. So it's going to happen. See here, there's a comment. The growth plan is not to be used as zoning. It is a guideline. What do you say to that?
So the growth plan, it's it's a guideline, and it is sometimes within the county we've used it as a map, which is incorrect use of it.
Okay.
So the guidelines, it's built into. I know that sometimes the other side can say, well, it's a guideline. We don't have to go by it. It's a legal mandate. It's adopted when you go to the county website and you pull up your zoning ordinances.
But it's not zoning.
It is. Yeah, it's built into the zoning.
Okay.
So when you read it, everything, like I think the very first statement, and it was adopted and ratified in, I think it's like 2017. So the very first paragraph on that says every development or every zoning decision must comply with the 2040 growth plan. So it's something that kind of gets ignored, but it's a mandate, and everything is built around that.
Here's the question then. So has it been ignored in other developments? So have other people been able to come up and push this kind of develop? They're like, okay, I want to do this. I have this property and I want to put a house on half acre. So they've been allowed to do that and ignored this growth plan. Has that been ignored already, and others have been allowed to do it, and now just because there's a larger development coming in, now all of a sudden it's like, growth plan.
Well, like I said,
that's my question.
Yeah,
okay.
And it depends on the area. Like in Roberts County, and it may be in other places in Roberts County. I wouldn't be privy to that because I'm local in Cedar Hill. But we've got one tract of land that is zoned R20, and there's 35 houses. And as far as the map, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
As far as it goes, it meets the criteria. I may not like it, but it does meet the criteria. And it's like I said, it's often
okay. So what's the difference then? Why does if they're putting a house on a half acre, what's the difference then? Just because there's just more houses?
Yeah, and
because it's I guess it's 15 acres versus 100 acres. Is it?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Now, how is that outlined then in the growth plan? Then is it say, okay, you can put a house on a half acre as long as you're not developing more than 15 acres? Does it say that?
It's built around your transect planning, and it mentions even when you pull up a 2040 growth plan. So your transect planning, it's from where you start off your core. So Cedar Hill, the core of Cedar Hill. So like your city hall, your post office. I mean, that's as core as we get in Cedar Hill. And then from that, so that particular subdivision, the 35 lot subdivision, is kind of within that core.
See, and that word "kinda" is where you get me.
Yeah.
Because this is what we get into when in a lot of the times when you get into small town issues, that's what you get into. You won't say anything on this one because I'm not. It's no big deal. But then somebody else comes in and they want the same, there's a precedent set.
Yeah.
And now you want to ignore it, but the precedent's set. And I mean, okay, so in the county commission, another comment here, the county commission never completed the process of having the guidelines match the regional planning and zoning rules. That's a problem.
Okay.
And because if the county commission has not gone, yes, it sounds like they haven't. And again, I'm reading the comments here. So what say to that? Has the county commission completed the process of having the guidelines match regional planning and zoning rules? Because if they haven't, that's a problem.
I think if you look at it, I mean, it's been adopted by planning and zoning. It's in the ordinance.
Planning and zoning from the county.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Okay.
If you go to the county website and pull it up, like I said, it's in there. Everything must comply with the 2040 growth plan. So it is legally, and I'm like you. I'm on the conservative side,
right?
And I'm all about oh gosh, you kind of roll your eyes when you hear about, oh man, that's and I think it was built around the spirit of not trying to tell people what to do with their own property. It's just to try to manage the growth before.
Yeah.
It's an interesting because we did the farmers market and things, and so a lot of people.
And y'all have a fantastic farmers market. I've heard just wonderful things about your farmers market.
We try, and you're
a great community, outstanding community, and but go ahead.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And so we talked to a lot of people from California, and me and my wife were talking about this the other day. And so I'm a big history guy. I love History Channel. And so the History Channel, it was talking about, and this is stuff beyond me. It was like talking about time travelers. I'm kind of like, all right, time traveling, whatever. And I had this discussion with a person from California a couple of days ago, and they were telling me, they said, well, John, we're coming from California. We've seen, in a way, the future of where you all are headed. And, it's interesting to look at that because, they're kind of like, well, you have to be responsible in what you're doing, and you have to make sure everything is lined up before we get to that point. And I think it's a distinction to make, is making sure that our grandchildren and children, as far as a marketing perspective of a county, you want to be a little bit different from the others. That's what entices people to come here, and that's why I love Robertson County. Right, is you get those growth, and growth is good, and it's built around the 2040 growth plan specifically is built around infill. So going into your urban areas and building those areas up with the responsible growth, and going into maybe say dilapidated neighborhoods or areas where are not as upkept, and seeing if we can develop there, and then slowly spread out. So it's a battle for I don't want to say it's a battle, but it's a compromise you try to make between the two.
Well, and again, we're going to run out of time here, John, but I
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
just cover some comments here, and I'm going to leave it. We've got one comment in your favor: 180 houses versus 35 is a big difference. Then another comment on the other side: 5-acre tracts do not conserve farmland, and I will speak to that because that's one thing people like. Well, I want to conserve the rural area, so I want this 10-acre tract. That's not preserving farmland. That's just like privatizing. That's just like me. I came in and I bought farmland that was tillable, and I'm not tilling it. That has not preserved the farmland. I've got my little 40 acres, and I've got my trees, but that didn't preserve farmland.
Exactly.
Well, and when that happens, and you sell these big tracts. I mean, if you've got a 10-acre tract and you can put 20 houses on it, versus coming in and having a 50-acre tract and you only put 4 houses on it, you've taken up a whole lot more farmland when people might not necessarily really even want that acreage.
And sometimes that you can create to the sprawl. So the 5-acre lots, and that's looking at our situation. We have said that we're all for R40, which is R40 is a house per acre, and so you're not. I know specifically with us that different communities can ask for different things and have compromises, and we in actually our first planning and zoning meeting we okayed the R40, and that was something that the community didn't challenge, and so we're we signed off on and put our I guess actions behind our words and said R40 we're okay with that, but R20 it's just too much. So
well, and again, we're out of time. I've got more comments here, but we just absolutely do not have time to get into it, and I apologize for that because we are just right here at the bottom of the hour, and I'm expecting a call from John Rose. But Vice Mayor John Edwards has been with us, and we've had a discussion about the growth here in Robertson County and what it looks like moving forward. So again, just if we're probably, we're going to continue this conversation. I've opened it up, and so we'll continue this conversation, and may get you back in here, and we'll talk to everybody concerned, and just kind of try to weigh this out. And again, bottom line is, where I'm coming.
Yes,
where I'm at on it. And I think, but I do have to get my commercial. It's been very nice talking with you,
Yes,
John.
ma'am.
God
Nice
bless
meeting
you.
you.
Thank
Yes,
you so
ma'am. Thank
much.
you so
And I'm
much.
gonna let
Yes,
you
ma'am.
go.
Yes,
But I've
ma'am.
got to do an ad before John calls me. I'm expecting a call from not this John, but Congressman
Yeah,
John
John.
Rose. Congressman John Rose is supposed to be calling us in just not at all. And he would disagree too. He's a very, very good guy. I want to say a little bit about Ricelman Buick GMC. Friends of ours, we love them here at the 1100 WSGI. They are one of our sponsors, and we are so excited that they are doing a good business, even though things look kind of odd here in the auto industry. I love talking to Todd. He says, "I know it looks weird, but not having all these cars on the lot." But he said it's just changed the way we do business. And what's going on is, he said, we have got a lot of people that never thought about doing an order on a car that are now saying, "Hey, I could actually order a car. It's not that big of a deal." And so they're going in and they're ordering a car, and they're seeing that it works to when the car comes in, it is theirs, and they kind of like how that works. They don't have to go from lot to lot to try to find a car, and they are excited about the opportunity to get exactly what they want without having to drive around. Well, you can do that now at Ricelman Buick GMC, and Buick and GMC, because they are still in high demand because they do trucks, SUVs, and sports utilities. Those vehicles are in high demand, and so they're being produced at a higher rate, and that means that you have a much better opportunity of getting exactly what you want if you'll stick with GMC and Buick. They have got, of course, pre-owned vehicles that they have coming in all the time that they're interested in showing you. Certified pre-owned vehicles. They have, I think this is John Rose calling us right now. We're going to try to go ahead and answer his call. Hang on just a second. Let's see here. Oh, how can I do this here? Bear with me, John. I'm trying to answer it. Hello. Hang on. It's not answering. Just a second. I'm sorry, guys, when we have to do this on the air like this. Oh, there it is. There it is.
Call from
John,
John
are you
Rose.
with me? John, are you
Okay.
with me?
I've sent the caller to voicemail. Goodbye.
Jeez. If anybody's listening in his office, please tell him to call me back. For some reason, it did not answer properly. This is fun. But anyway, we're going to finish talking about Riceman Buick GMC. You've got leasing and financing options available. All you can do is start with the process, filling out the application online at ricemanbuickgmc.com. You can start that process. And they've also got a great service department to back up their warranty coverage every single day. They have the service department open, and you can get in touch with them just by stopping by there. They're at 2516 Memorial Boulevard. You can give them a call at 615-384-3559, 615-384-3559. They're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. Saturday, they're open 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. Good friends of ours, Riceman Buick GMC. Get by there today and be sure and always tell them that U-Turn sent you. And we are anticipating John Rose giving us a call. Hopefully, come on in here, Mark Vivio, if you will come in here and sit down. My husband's here just to kind of be my backup because John's trying to call us, and we're hoping he's going to give us one more try. But here we go. We're going to try this again here. Let's see if we can get this to answer this time.
Call from
John Rose.
John?
Laverne?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Praise God. I'm so sorry. It always seems to be like a dance trying to get you on the air here. We're going to figure this out one of these days. How are you doing, sir?
I'm well. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. I saw Chelsea put up a picture of Sam. What a cutie. Oh my goodness. Are you just having a blast with those little boys?
Oh, they're wonderful. It's really lots of fun, and they're both cute. I guess every dad thinks that, but
They are.
They're cute, and I enjoy them. And Sam in particular has just got the most pleasant personality. He'll just look at you, wait for you to smile at him, and then he'll just give you the biggest grin, and he does it for everyone, not just me.
That's awesome. But I get a kick out of tell Chuds we enjoy. A lot of people when they're in public life they won't share much about their family, but we enjoy that because it makes you real, and people know that hey, you're doing what you're doing because you got these little boys coming behind you, and you want to make a better world for them, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and so I mean, when you see that, you see what really matters in your life. So, anyway, enjoy seeing your family. So tell Chelsea I said hello, and to keep us up to date on the kiddos. So, but we've got just a half hour, and we now know we need to get right to it. Where do you want to start? I submitted you a few questions that came in from some of the folks here in Robertson County. Did you have a chance to look at those?
I did. Well, I'm assuming Elissa did, and that she incorporated them. So
Okay.
I hope so.
Sure.
I
If you didn't, I'll
was
mention
trying to
something.
log on to my email as we're talking here, and
Well,
I'm not being successful.
That's okay. One of the primary because we had the special session that just came up here in Tennessee, is concerns about the reach of the government in the name of COVID, in the name of the pandemic. And in full disclosure, I've been vaccinated. Every doctor I know has told me I'm somebody that says please get a vaccine because my friend Phil Valentine died, and I have no problem with the vaccine. I've got a lot of friends who just really have a problem with it, and I respect them like crazy. Their right to say, don't give me a shot. And we've all heard stories about people who have felt like they had to get vaccinated. I mean, there was a big story, and I forget what state it was in, where a young woman, she felt very pressured to get the vaccine. She died. I mean, it happens. And so I tell her, but you do you, I'll do me. But it's just like the conversation I just had with the vice mayor of Cedar Hill, talking about telling farmers how you can use your land and things like that. I'm very much a person that you've got to give me my freedom to say I don't want a shot. And so that was the question more than anything is what are you doing personally to limit the reach that the government's trying to do and imposing upon us in the name of COVID and pandemics and all of that?
Sure. So we have I have joined in a number of efforts on the Republican side, writing letters to the various government officials that are charged with implementing Biden's mandate, and also introducing legislation that would kind of go at this a couple of different ways. One of those pieces of legislation is essentially just goes straight at the mandates. The other one would get at them by restricting the use of any federal funds to enforce them. But I will tell you, I mean, with us in the minority, it's unlikely, it appears unlikely that we're going to be able to get Democrats to join with us. And so it's unlikely we're going to even get a vote on these, or even get a hearing on them for that matter. Obviously the Democratic Party controls the House right now. Nancy Pelosi's the Speaker, so she really controls the House. So she controls what we even talk about. And so the only way we can force an issue is to either get 218 members to sign what's called a discharge petition to move something forward. There are 213 Republicans, so that means we have to get 5 Democrats to join us. And right now, there are no Democrats who are willing to cross the line and do that. And so we can't force the Speaker. Obviously, Democrats across the country are hearing the same things that we as Republicans are from their constituents. So they're hearing, that people are upset about the mandates, but at least so far, they're unwilling to accede to those wishes and try to stop what the president's doing. I had hoped that the president would back off of this, but obviously we saw this past week he stepped forward into this and announced a date for the implementation of the OSHA portion of his mandate, executive order. Yeah. And so it appears that he's just determined to lean into this. And then, of course, you would hope that perhaps they might see the handwriting on the wall from the elections last week. But it's, as we've seen, as they seem want to do, they've looked at that and figured out a way to interpret it as we aren't doing enough. So it's kind of humorous. You'd think that they would read that and say, well, obviously we need to moderate what we're doing. We need to back off. We need to listen to what folks are saying. But instead, their most shrill voices, people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they look at it and say, see, we're being punished because we aren't moving far enough, fast enough. And so, I say all of that to say, we need to be ready in case the winds shift, and there are Democrats that are willing to join us. So we've got those proposals there, and they could come forward virtually immediately if Democrats joined us. But so this all illustrates that it just matters. The outcome of elections just matter a lot. We find ourselves in a situation where we've got these unpopular proposals from this president who promised he would not do this, as I think everyone knows that's been listening and paying attention. The president promised he wouldn't put mandates like this in place, and yet he has.
Well, and again, it's going to continue on. This is just, there's an awful lot of us that feel like it's not really so much his direction, but those that are directing him. It's how it feels. And we just keep our eye on midterms. We're just keeping our eye on the midterms and any election that comes up that give us a chance to begin to take control again, to where we can start seeing things kind of calm down. Because across the country, everybody's feeling it. What are you hearing from people when you go out? I mean, what's the first thing that comes out of when you step into a situation, you step into a room, this subject's going to come up. What would that subject be?
Gosh, there are a handful of them right now, but election integrity, I think, is one of those. I think people are, still very, very concerned about that, and so I hear about that often. The mandate issue obviously is one. Inflation is another. People are very, very worried about their, the future of the country. So the various social issues that are being advanced, things like critical race theory. So the culture wars, if you will, and the moves by the administration to that seem at every point to just be kind of a stick in the eye of anybody who values American freedom and democracy and our great history. So
yeah. Well, and I know that the migrant situation, and I don't like using the word illegal because we're dealing with a migration that is coming across our southern border, and the things that they're wanting to do from the federal level, and that was one of the questions that was sent, basically saying that Biden has proposals to help those migrating into our country that should be going, specifically the question was saying that more should be going to the veterans rather than those who are coming into the country that are not supposed to be here. And can you speak specifically to that?
Well, so I may have missed part of your question there, U-turn, but we do have, so the president has continued essentially to telegraph that through his actions and words that people should just make their way to our southern border. Mm-hmm. So we have an open border and people are streaming their way through from around the country and up to our southern border and are essentially able to just walk into the country. And once they're there, the president essentially has completely reinstituted from the Obama administration the catch and release policy. And so while they, a very large number before the year's over, more than 2 million will be apprehended and kind of processed, they're just released with a court date into the interior of the country. And as we've seen over and over again, they don't come back. In large measure, they don't return. Those that do, if they do, they come back. And if they lose their case, then they're told report back at this date, and we're gonna remove you from the country, and then they don't come back. So the reality is of those people that have entered the border historically, at least, unless something changes, 99% of them will remain in the country forever. I mean, that's just the reality. You hear this proposal that the Democrats have been advancing for amnesty, or that would be applied to they say about 8 million people, which itself is just a huge number. The reality is, if you really dig into the data, it's many millions more. Probably double that number that would apply to, and so. We've just lost control of our southern border, and more so under this administration. We're breaking all the records now for people coming into the country, at any time in history and coming illegally. And of course, it's an insult to those people who are waiting in line to come to the country legally. And for those who may be in favor of this country accepting lots of immigrants, remember that we do accept more immigrants legally than any country in the world, and we have for a very long time, and that's a good thing, and we want people to come here. But we obviously, we've seen in recent months, over the last year or two, and even before, that this country creates lots of opportunity. That's part of why we're all here, and it always has, and we hope it will continue. I guess the policies of the Biden administration put that in question. So we need people to come here to this country. That's a good thing. But we've got to, they should play by the rules. They should come here legally, and we should stop this illegal flow. So we should finish the wall at the southern border, which this president has stopped. The materials are all just laying there on the ground. I've been down there twice this year, and and all of the Border Patrol folks say if the wall was finished, it would help them deal with the issue. But of course, that's all moot, because this administration wants these people to walk in. So presumably, even if the wall was finished, they'd just open the gates and tell people to walk through. I mean, that's how they would respond to that. It's not about having the will to finish the wall, which they don't, but it's that they want this to happen. This president wants this to happen. That's why he's never been to the border. That's why the vice president really has never been to the border. The president, in a move that's kind of ridiculous, they've pointed to a time, I think, 13 years ago, when his motorcade drove along the interstate that is near the border, and they count that as him having been to the border, is that, he saw it out the window of his car one time,
It's incredible.
And of course, if a Republican said that, that's all we'd hear. The late night comics wouldn't be able to let that go. The news media would talk about it constantly, but this president, of course, gets a pass on that. So, we all just need to remember, he saw the border one time, out the window of his car.
Or from a plane, right? Or
Yeah,
saw it from above.
Exactly. So
Right.
you remember how they excoriated President Bush when he flew over New Orleans?
Exactly.
Intentionally trying to stay out of the way. So he had a good reason not to go, which is that he didn't want to get in the way of the rescue and the recovery effort that was still underway in New Orleans at the time. But now this president, can't find time to go to the border.
Yeah. Well, and I had the opportunity to visit whenever Obama was in office, and the same situation that was happening down there at that time, where they were just walking across. It was breathtaking to see the absolute just ignoring any kind of process coming into our country, and seeing the devastation on the other side when these folks were being enticed to come in and way too young to be traveling, subjecting themselves to human trafficking, all kinds of things, carrying drugs across the border. I mean, I had law enforcement, different folks. I've, had the sheriff and the police chief and different ones in. I always try to touch base with law enforcement once a month in some regard, and we have one death a week from overdose in Little Springfield right now, and that's breathtaking that kind of thing is happening. But when you have this porous southern border, it makes so many of us just really not know what to do, and we just have to buckle down and make sure that the things going on locally are happening in the way it should. But what do your constituents up there say? Do they just ignore the illegal drugs and the human trafficking aspect of this?
They are. I mean, I think they are really just ignoring that. So again, if when we've visited the southern border and you talk to the Customs and Border Protection agents, what they tell us is the story that the same cartels, of course, that are trafficking the people across the border, and in virtually every case of an individual coming across the border, they're forced to deal with the cartels because, unlike us, we don't control our southern border, but on the Mexican side of the border, the cartels are in control, and so they have folks watching the border along the southern side, on their side, on the southern side of the border, and they, so if you just happen to make it there on your own, they're going to stop you and demand a toll, essentially, for you to come across. So it's not as though you can, unless you just get lucky, you're not going to be able to get across on your own. And that means you're going to have to pay the Mexican cartels. Those same cartels are the ones trafficking in the drugs, and of course a whole wide variety of different drugs coming in. The one that probably is driving the current epidemic of overdoses and deaths is fentanyl, and of course that fentanyl is being made in China. China is letting it happen. They know where the fentanyl is going, and it's trafficked through Mexico and into the United States illegally. And then, of course, it's used to they lace it into other drugs to, increase the potency of those drugs. And of course, if you're not careful, then too much fentanyl, it just takes a very small amount of fentanyl, as you know, to kill you to be a lethal dose. In fact, I haven't seen a statistic here in a few weeks, but a few weeks ago, we had already had enough fentanyl come into the United States this year to kill every American like 5 times over.
That's
I think
incredible.
It was for 3 or 5 times over. So it's a real problem. I think, frankly, the Chinese view this as just one more tool in their arsenal to destroy America and become the supreme power in the world. So they are just taking advantage of the fact that this president has left our southern border open. And so what happens, of course, is the cartels, they gather up a large group of immigrants and send them in, these folks that are coming in, and they send them rushing across at one point, and then, a mile away where there are no Border Patrol officers available because they've all had to respond to this surge, they're the high traffic, the high value folks that are coming in, the ones that are, have paid extra, and the drugs and the other contraband come into the country and, undetected, undeterred. And so that's what's happening. I mean, this president and our, is just being played here by the cartels. And of course, we're creating a criminal culture in Mexico that will ultimately, be, corrosive to the rule of law there. It already is, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, essentially, they run that country indirectly because everyone's afraid of them, and they're afraid of them because they have all these resources that are being generated, billions of dollars that they're making from this illegal enterprise. And so it destroys the, basic fabric of government in Mexico and the other Central American countries. And then these people coming here, those countries are losing their future to us. And, that's not good for them either. They're not happy about it. The triangle countries down there, the Central Triangle countries are losing their future to the United States. And so it just creates a problem for the whole hemisphere, really. Mm-hmm. And then, that we have to somehow get control over this. And remember that in January of this year, we had the problem under control. I mean, the prior president, President Trump, love him or hate him. Maybe some people listening that just did not like the president. But the truth is, over the 4 years of his presidency, they had done a lot of things, and it wasn't easy, and it took some time. But by golly, by the end of his administration, they had figured this out, mm-hmm. and through a range of different approaches, they had gotten control over this and slowed the illegal immigration really to a trickle. Yeah. And we've seen the courts, of course, have embraced that because they're now forcing the Biden administration to put back in place the Remain in Mexico policy that President Trump. Now, ultimately, the Biden administration will prevail in removing that policy, but they basically tried to take a shortcut in removing it, and the courts forced them to re-implement it. So we have to remember that. I mean, all the president would have had to have done to avoid this problem is to do nothing.
Yeah. And just let the policy ride. And I just have to say, I've got to do a break real quick, and we'll come back and wrap it up with some final thoughts. But do you not just sometimes just wonder how in the world they can't see what's going on all around them? It's just, I can't imagine the frustration that or maybe this has just been a very long year. So far, it's just, it's been a very long year. So
it has, and remember, we've got 3 more on.
I know.
Today,
but anyway, and the views and opinions are our own. So, but let me go ahead and pause. I'm kind of talking over you here, but I said the views and opinions are our own and don't necessarily express the views and ownership of this radio station. But I will come back and talk to our Congressman John Rose. He is part of the Republican Party, but he represents everybody, folks, and is doing the very best he can to make sure that your voice is heard and that the right thing is being done in Washington. And it is a daunting task right now, but his office door is always open, very accessible. But I do need to pause for just a moment, John, and talk about Corbin Creek Greenhouse Gifts Nursery and Gardening Center, open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5, Sunday from 1 to 5. You can give them a call and get some details, 615-384-3185, 615-384-3185. They're at 4920 Highway 161. And what will you find? You'll find them getting ready for winter right now. Amy does not like winter, but she deals with it, and she will bring you into the greenhouses and say, take some of this beautiful greenery home and bring that life into your house while things are dormant outside. And she will help you bring that breath of life into your home. And she can also talk to you about CBD products, which are a game changer for me. With me working the CMAs for the last week, I am tired and I'm sore and I'm achy because I have arthritis. It's part of my life. So I've been taking a little bit of extra CBD. I've gotten to where I'll use the oil actually as a topical, even straight to my skin. I love the salve, but I like the strength of the stronger oil sometimes, and it's great for bug bites. It's just all kinds of stuff. It's a natural thing God gave us. And man, oh man, it has made a difference in my life, and it may you as well. But you can go and talk to him about that. If you have questions about CBD, Amy is the one to talk to. She's really studied this stuff. It's real interesting to talk to her, any of the folks out there. But Corbin Creek Greenhouse Gifts Nursery and Gardening Store, Monday through Saturday, they're open from 9 to 5. Sunday from 1 to 5. When you get by there, please always tell them that U-Turn sent you. And John, one other question that came in that we haven't touched on is the housing crisis. Can you speak to that? It was one of the younger folks that submitted a question, said that for them, they're just getting out of college and they would love to buy land, maybe get a house, they're engaged. And it's rather daunting when you start looking at that. Is there anything in your mind right now in regards to affordable housing is a huge issue for the people I deal with from a benevolent standpoint that just can't find a place to live that they can afford. Can you speak to that? Are you there, John? I am not hearing you. Did I lose you? There you are. Okay, John, I had you turned down, so start over. I had the wrong pod up. I was like, where'd he go? So my question, and then now you go.
Sure. So I do hear about this issue quite a bit, and I serve on the Financial Services Committee in Congress, and it's probably useful to say that area of service then focuses a lot of the attention that I can pay to issues in Congress is determined by the committee I serve on. And so I have that is an area that actually is within the jurisdiction that at least the federal involvement in housing is a jurisdictional question for financial services, and I serve on the housing subcommittee. So I, and it just so happens that the chair of our committee, Maxine Waters, is very interested in federal housing and the federal housing subsidy program. So I hear a lot about this, and therefore I think a lot about it. A lot of what's happening in the housing arena is a function of just general inflation in the economy, and we've seen this, particularly over the last, 10 months of this year, that we just have seen prices skyrocketing for basic building materials, and this is again, a part of what, we would probably point to as the Biden inflation. And it's going to only get worse, frankly, because of the trillions of dollars in spending that the Biden administration seems determined to add. So you end up with the classic drivers of inflation, and we saw that with lumber prices earlier this year. We see that with the breakdown in the supply chain. All of that is making it expensive to build new housing. Then the raft of federal regulations that are out there that complicate, the construction, the development of new housing is a problem. And then, frankly, it's not as much of a problem, I would tell you, in Tennessee, though we see some pockets of it, but local zoning and local permitting restrictions, that's a big problem across the country, particularly on the two coasts, the East Coast and the West Coast, where we see the greatest homelessness problem in the country, or the greatest unhoused problem, is that it's being driven because, so for example, if you look at San Francisco, they virtually are not issuing in any, they issued the number of housing permits that they issued last year would be comparable to a small Midwestern town. And so, you have this huge population looking for affordable housing, and the problem is that the kind of Tony neighborhoods like Speaker Pelosi lives in, they don't want any new housing construction because it might mess up their neighborhood. So places like our major cities are making it difficult to build affordable new housing, and that's creating the homelessness problem because it's driving up the cost of housing. It makes housing less available. In places like Tennessee, I think what we're seeing is a result of really the policies and the kind of the original slow Obama economy. We got way behind in construction of new housing units during that time. We got a lot of people coming into Tennessee who are trying to escape the places that I was just describing. And so that's, they're competing for the available housing. The markets normally would solve these problems, notwithstanding the issues that are creating the inflationary spiral. But so it's, we just have got to fight in Tennessee to make sure that our local governments don't put too many restrictions in place that prevent the construction of affordable housing. And but I do hear that issue, and it's a complicated issue. I will tell you the answer is not federal intervention. So So I'll
Right.
say just a
I
word
agree.
about
Yeah.
that. If
We're
you've
going to
got-
have to
if you've
wrap
got
it up,
time.
John. But yeah, go ahead. Just go ahead and
Okay.
quickly wrap it up, and let's say, because I know we're over time here, but I don't
so
think
there's,
that ILU minds.
we
but
put in place an emergency rental assistance program last year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just starts to help exacerbate the problem. Is over $46 billion to help renters pay their rent, and so that's just one of the issues. Then, and it's just hard to get all of that money distributed. So, and then of course that just adds to the problem of too much money chasing too few goods and services.
Yeah, I should have asked this question earlier, I think, because this is one that, like you said, it's right in your wheelhouse. And it's kind of interesting that it kind of came back around. That's kind of where we started the show. And we did not intend for you to speak to it as well, but it just did kind of wrap around itself. So I appreciate it so much. Any parting thoughts?
Well, I just want to say, as always, thank you to the people of the 6th District for the opportunity to represent them in the U.S. House, and I just pledge that I'll work hard every day to make sure your values are reflected in as much as I can.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir, and appreciate your time as always. God bless you, and we'll be praying for you, okay?
Thanks, U-Turn.
Thank you. God bless you. Congressman John Rose with us this morning, and his office is always open. And if you need anything from them, just reach out to them. And be sure and always, too, let everybody know that what you're hearing here on 1100 WSGI, this is One Street Over. I will look forward to joining you tomorrow. It's Dr. Chris Causey's day. We'll be hearing from our Director of Schools. Have a wonderful day. God bless. Again, this is 1100 WSGI.